Welcome back to the Balancing Act podcast. I'm Andy Temte. On the Balancing Act, we talk to business leaders and industry experts to explore the balancing acts we play in our professional lives and learn about the events that put rocket boosters behind their career success. Today, we have Michelle Reiina joining us. Michelle is an internationally recognized pioneer in the field of organizational trust and is best-selling co-author of the groundbreaking book, Trust and Betrayal in the Workplace. More than 3 decades of research and practice have culminated in her new book, The Art of Trust Building, which should be out by the time this podcast airs in late January. So welcome to the show, Michelle.
Oh, thank you so much, Andy. I'm delighted to be here.
Excellent. Well, my balancing act, all of our listeners know, is between the organizational trust and accountability. So the topic today just really fits into our purpose here at the Balancing Act. But before we get started, please give our listeners the elevator pitch version of your story.
Oh, it's the story I love to tell. You know, my husband, Dennis Reina, is the co-author with me of our books. And we just recently celebrated 32 years of marriage. Dennis and I fell in love in graduate school, supported one another through our doctorates. And at that time in our life, we actually formed a small consulting company. And we were working with small to mid-sized businesses throughout the New England area. And leaders would call us and ask us to help them understand why their teams were underperforming, why their strategic initiatives were stalling out, and why silos were forming rather than cross-pollination of relationships and collaboration throughout their organization. Dennis and I sounds familiar for today, doesn't it, Andy? I'm talking 30 years ago, but we hear some of that now, don't we?
Oh, it's today, it's yesterday, it's 10 years ago. The same challenges just show up maybe in different forms with slightly different names.
A human dynamic. So at that time, they were presented to us as challenges and problems. And we, by the way, leaders present those to us today as well. But Dennis and I would step into an organization and begin to engage in dialogue and discussion to help understand what the root cause was behind some of these challenges. And again and again and again, we heard the exact same thing, which was the absence of trust. 30 years ago, there wasn't much out related to trust. There was a proliferation of literature that talked about the importance of trust, but there was very little that helped us to understand what you really did to build it. So Dennis and I dedicated our doctoral dissertations to help us dig into that topic. But as you know, you earn a PhD and you have more questions than you do have answers, so you keep on going. So long story short, we engaged in 4 years of independent research and created a construct of trust that resulted in Trust and Betrayal. But what really emerged is our life's work. So our organization is dedicated to helping leaders and organizations transform their cultures through building high trust relationships, which is really the enabler and driver of results and the reference points for people actually being accountable for their outlook, their attitude, and most importantly, their behavior.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. Now, to the accelerant question, what's one event in your life that just put rocket boosters underneath you as you grew in your career?
I love that question because it takes me back to a very powerful moment in time. A few months after our first book was released, Dennis and I were invited into an executive forum with Walt Disney World. And we're in a room and we're with a group of very senior executives, and we're moving into some discovery-related conversations around trust. Our book was newly out, so we were really excited to share with them the behavioral constructs of trust. trust and helping them to understand the innate vulnerability, what causes it to break down, and introduce them to the frameworks of what really helps trust be renewed and sustained over time. During one of the breaks, a couple of leaders happened to be at the back of the room with us. And you know how it is. You're all replenishing your coffee, your tea, and you're having chatter. And one of the executives said, have the two of you considered measuring this? If there was a way that you could actually help teams and leaders measure those behaviors, that could be really extraordinary. That was probably one of the most significant pieces of input we have ever received from an executive client. We went back and we talked to our research advisor. And I got to tell you, Andy, 6 months later, we had our very first assessment. What that conversation did was give birth to an entire trajectory of our professional lives and what we bring to our organizations, suites of assessments that measure trust and give leaders and teams and organizations a starting point. And from there, we've been able to create and develop workshops and programs, and now at this point in the digital age, online learning journeys that help people take action on the insights they gain from those assessment results.
Yeah, so bad coffee, stale coffee at the back of a conference room leads to your rocket booster moment. That's awesome.
Yeah, because, clients have a way of telling us where we need to go to serve them.
Yeah.
I would never have thought of actually going and creating a system of psychometric measurements. I would never have, I'm a qualitative person,
Right.
but I'll be darned if they didn't point us in the direction. And when we followed that direction, something extremely profound unfolded, giving greater depth to our life's work.
Yeah. So let's talk trust. It seems blindingly obvious that trust is essential for high-functioning teams and workplaces. But what's the main thing standing in the way of creating high-trust organizational cultures?
I think the main thing, Andy, is people take it for granted. There's a way in which people hold it in the abstract. And as they hold it in the abstract, they kind of hold it as far away, where actually trust is something that begins with each and every one of us. It's behavioral. So we may, as you say, everybody knows it's important. Everybody needs it. Everybody wants it. Dennis and I actually believe everybody deserves it. But that is not enough. Believing it, valuing it, doesn't necessarily bring it into our lives. It's the way we become intentional in our behavior. The way we show up and bring ourselves to one another is essential. People have a tendency to kind of hold back, and they're waiting and watching for the next person to take the first step. Well, waiting and watching isn't going to bring trust into our life and our relationships. It's us taking that first step in our behavior and extending trust to the other that's going to begin that reciprocal aspect where trust takes shape and form.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is that hope is not a management strategy, and especially as it relates to trust.
Yeah, it's a bit of a fantasy. We can sit back and hope, but that is not going to bring it to us.
Right. There's work involved. So let's talk about when trust is eroded. What's an implication of low trust cultures that most leaders just aren't connecting the dots on? What are they not thinking about?
I think they are not thinking about the dramatic impact. Leaders have a tendency, when trust has been made vulnerable, so I'm going to just kind of riff on this for just a minute, Andy, and thank you for your patience. I think a big mistake that leaders make is they assume it's big things that cause trust to break down, a big single act, when actually that's not the case. There are small, minor ways that trust breaks down on a day in and day out basis. Failure for people to have access to information that they really need to be able to do their work. People not having an opportunity to be involved in decisions that impact their day-to-day, being left out of decisions. Gossip, conjecture, backbiting, failure to keep agreements, the lack of clarity around expectations. Each and one of those on their own don't sound so significant, but when they're at play in small, subtle, minor ways, day in and day out, trust erodes over time. When that's unfolding, leaders have a tendency to look in the opposite direction. What happens is there's an accumulative effect that causes the creative energy of trust to contract. In that landscape of vulnerable trust, people pull back. They withdraw their best efforts rather than looking forward with creativity and chutzpah and innovation. They're holding back and looking back. The lowest common denominator becomes the norm, and there's no way to explain or rationalize any situation out of that. It's real, and without attention, it's something that can last a very considerable amount of time. So there's a huge holdback that unfolds when there's that ongoing vulnerability and breach of trust.
So the C-suite is looking for that one thing, that one big thing that is breaking trust down, but it's the accumulation of a whole bunch of small little things that all wrap up. So the way that I'm translating that in my mind is that it should be all about empowering your frontline managers, your mid-level managers, creating clarity and consistency across the organization to give them the tools that they need to keep trust alive and vibrant. Am I hearing that right?
Yes, there's and the one key word you hit on was consistency. So, Andy, in our construct, there are three dimensions of trust. So, trust can be seen as an abstract, and generally it is. It's out there. It's invisible. We don't see it. We can't touch it, but we sure do feel it.
Yeah.
The trust of character is extremely essential. You hit on something around consistency of behavior, expectations, people knowing what they can expect, what they can count on one another for in a steady, consistent way is very empowering. Communication, clarity, transparency, openness, honesty, safety, very empowering. Trust of capability, helping people learn new skills, harnessing talents, involving people, engaging people is very empowering. It's not talk, it's action. It's behavior that backs those words, that inspires and fosters that high trust cultures, and leaders staying at that with consistency so it becomes a part of the way we live and work every day.
Yeah, I'm going back to the marriage counseling that I've been involved in with my dear wife, and I'm just, actions speak louder than words. and so our listeners know this about me, but the lessons from marriage counseling can translate directly into the workplace. People think that they're wildly different from one another, but they're really not.
Well, Andy, I work with my husband. He is my life partner. So, we do our research and we do our consulting and we work with teams and we work with leaders. But you know what? We have to live it in our own lives as well. Right. And interestingly enough, one of the most profound teachers of trust is our life at home. Relationships at home can help us to understand our relationships at work. And our relationships at work can help us bring our behavior home. We are full human beings. The importance of trust is equal. So I so much love that commentary, and saying it in a playful way. There's some really robust reality to that and how we all live life on a day in and day out basis and the role that trust plays.
Yeah, I think people talk about bringing the whole self into the world of work, and a lot of people are saying, "Well, don't do that. That's ridiculous." But I believe very strongly that separating those two, your work life and your home life, and acting differently in those two environments is more hurtful than it is helpful. And this whole trust conversation and building trust in the same way in your home life and in your work life, it just seems very, very, reusing the phrase, blindingly obvious to me.
Well, asking there to be separation or distinction is actually a pretty significant violation of trust, because it's an invitation to not really be whole. When trust building is about honoring the fullness of each and every person and the fullness of the life that we lead. So high trust cultures and leaders that are dedicated to building high trust cultures really do invite the whole person into that space. It on one hand is glaringly evident, but on the other hand, it's glaringly overlooked. And there's just not enough room and space that invites that in for a person to be fully who they are. That's essential for one trusting themselves.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Michelle. We're going to cut to a really quick break, and we'll be right back with Michelle Reiina talking about building organizational trust. Want to understand money, markets, and the economy to make better financial decisions? I'm Andy Temte. Join me every Saturday morning for Money Lessons with Andrew Temte on YouTube or your favorite podcast streaming service. And we're back with Michelle Reiina talking about building organizational trust. So, Michelle, I like to run thought experiments. You've got the senior executive team of a mid-sized business, $400 million revenue line sitting in front of you right now. What's the most important piece of advice you can give them to help build trust in their organization?
The first piece of advice I would give them is to take stock. Be thoughtful to not make assumptions about what's at play right now that's contributing to the health and quality of trust. Get a starting point. I encourage organizations to engage in a trust assessment that they're actually able to measure and gain baseline data of the level of trust in the behaviors that actually build it. So with the benefit of having baseline data, they've got something they can count on, that they can sink their teeth in. They know behaviorally the dynamics and the patterns that are at play that's contributing to trust building practices already at play. That's extraordinarily valuable because there's a leverage point. They're also going to be able to see the truth, behavioral patterns that contribute to vulnerability of trust, or where there's a risk of trust breaking down. With the benefit of data, they can have a perspective, a sense of knowing that points them in the direction of where they can focus and concentrate and lean in on the area and the facets of trust and relationships that need the deepest level of support from them.
So do you also hand them handheld mirrors and ask them to look into them as part of that exercise?
Oh, well, that's the very courageous part of the exercise is yes, because, they can't expect that miraculously trust is going to all of a sudden appear and we have nirvana. A critical aspect of building trust is raised awareness. In any leader that values trust and is prepared to get behind it behaviorally does have a responsibility to grow in awareness and look at themselves and their own behavior. But it's not just the leader, it's everybody, Andy, having that opportunity to look in the mirror, not to judge, not to criticize, not to beat ourselves up, but to help us understand, how am I showing up? How is my behavior bringing to me and to others really the most precious commodity in our relationships is the level of trust in those relationships. So I love the playful moment, do we hold up the mirror? Yeah, but in a way that has compassion and supports the courage that we all muster within us to become more aware of
Yeah.
our own behavior.
Yeah, in my experience, and I have wonderful experiences in the world of business, but I've seen the good, bad, and the ugly. And one of the things that I've seen is that executive teams, they want to install a new program, go on an organizational health journey, continuous improvement journey, whatever, but then they opt themselves out of the journey. This is stuff for everybody else to focus on. Am I hitting that nail on the head?
Oh, the tendency to delegate it. I'm going to throw some budgetary dollars behind it,
Yeah.
like everybody to go off and do that work. Let me know how it goes. So the truth is, that's a pretty significant breach of trust.
Yeah.
Because it is an abdication of responsibility, and it's an abdication of the accountability that leaders have to model the way. The senior leaders don't have 100% responsibility, Andy. They don't. Creating a high trust culture is every single solitary person's responsibility. It takes everybody. But leaders cannot expect others to take responsibility if they're not willing to step in and be a part of that journey themselves.
Yeah. So let's now do our mentorship moment. Now you got a mid-level manager at that very same company sitting in front of you right now. They want to lead from the middle. They want to improve organizational trust, but they don't know where to start. How do you provide advice to that individual?
That individual they're sitting here with me. The first step I'm going to have them take is I'm going to encourage them to actually get the book, The Art of Trust Building, so that they can equip themselves with knowledge, that they can tune into those chapters in that book that give them some very concrete guidance and direction. They're going to learn about trust of character and the behaviors that build it, that build alignment within their team. They're going to learn about trust of communication that makes it safe for there to be honesty and transparency. They're going to learn about trust of capability that prepares people for the future and leverages their talents. But the aspect in there I'm most excited for them to get is the self-assessment that is a companion to that book. So when this leader gets this book, traveling with the book is an assessment that helps them actually tune into their behavior. My hope for this leader is that they will actually take that assessment so they can gain firsthand knowledge of how they're experiencing those behaviors, and to have the members of their team take that assessment and use the book as a guide. Turn to the discussion guide. Bring their teams together around the table. Grab a cup of coffee, whether it's in a room or virtually, and open the door for some conversation using that guide of what we've learned, what we're discovering, what insights did you gain from your self-assessment. That's a very powerful starting point that mid-level manager can take to help themselves and their own growth, but open the door to bring their teams into that fold with them. It's empowering. They're going to gain tools and insight and action steps that they can take with their people in a highly self-directed way.
What if, so what happens managing up? Let's suppose they have a skeptical, just get the work done leader that sits above them. How do they introduce the conversation that this work is beneficial, this work is going to help drive results?
I think the first thing that they can do is really talk with the leader about the problems that are at play, because this is a manager that's going to be tuned into those problems because they're the ones that are being asked to solve these problems. So a conversation that's acknowledging the problems and challenges that they're working with. It's do we need to accelerate the cultivation of a product? Are we needing our people to take greater risks? Are we opening up some new channels for serving customers? This manager talking with this business leader about challenge or problems or goals and objectives and how this behavioral construct can help make that action happen. Introduce them to the principles, invite them to take the assessment, talk about what they've learned, talked about what the team has learned, impart that wisdom and knowledge, but provide a call to action, the simple things that that leader can be invited into in collaboration and partnership with that manager. Make it real, connected to the business needs and objectives.
Yeah. And my advice back to this mid-level manager is don't be afraid to take that book and plop it on your senior leader's desk politely, but just say, hey, I got a lot out of this. I would really appreciate it if you crack the spine on this book and open it up as well. Oh, and by the way, I've highlighted a few passages that I really found impactful. That was used on me as a senior leader, and it really did help. So,
and I would like to empower that manager to actually deepen it a little bit. Here's a book. I'm inviting you to read it, and this is why. And I'm highlighting a page that has a link to an assessment. I'd like you to take that assessment, and I'm going to schedule a time to circle back in a couple of weeks. I've taken it. My team has taken it. I'm asking you to please take it, and let's follow up. And I want to chat about what you learned. I'd like to talk to you about my team learned, and I'd like us to discuss what next steps we can take together. There's accountability, Andy.
Yeah, excellent. So, Michelle, we got to start wrapping things up. What's like one thing that we haven't discussed today that you'd be like hitting yourself on the head and going, geez, I wish we said that?
I would say that it's important for everybody to understand that trust is not a one and done. It's not a linear street. We as people are ever evolving human beings, and we ourselves as people are imperfect. Trust is at its just as an innate aspect of trust. It's vulnerable. We can never take it for granted. Andy, trust is a precious commodity. It requires our ongoing attention and intention. The minute we take it for granted is the minute we invite it to actually be eroded.
Yeah. Going back to marriage counseling, one of the mindsets that I was left with was that trust is like a ladder. It's steps up. You might take but once steps up the ladder, you're building trust, but then it just takes one thing and zoop, you're right back down at the bottom of the ladder.
Yeah. It can take just that one thing, or it can take lots of little tiny things. But I think the key point that I would actually be frustrated with myself if I didn't articulate is that there are times when it is going to be vulnerable. We are going to let people down. And people are going to let us down. Doesn't mean that we're bad people. It means that we're human beings, which is why we can't take our eye off the ball. It's a real commitment. It's an approach to life, cultivating and protecting and sustaining that precious commodity called trust.
Yeah. Well, Michelle, when we get to the end, we'll talk about where to get your books and how to get in touch with you. But let's have a little fun and do some lightning round questions, shall we?
Sure.
Excellent. So you've just won a $100 million lotto jackpot, but there's a stipulation that half of your net winnings go to one philanthropic organization or cause. Who do you pick?
I picked the Hugs Foundation that is rooted in Rochester, New York. It's an extraordinary foundation that was founded by Dr. Vito Catella, who's a remarkably talented plastic surgeon. This foundation travels to Ecuador, Guatemala, and Vietnam and beyond to provide surgery to children with hair lip. It's to give them the opportunity to have a smile. And why I'm so committed to that foundation is Dr. Vita Catella would say, everybody deserves to have a smile. And I know that when we have that ability to express ourselves, it's so energetic and so inspiring in helping us to grow and deepen our ability to trust within ourselves. So that is where I would go.
Oh, awesome. Question 2, I give you access to a really small time machine. You can send a message to an earlier version of Michelle Reiina. What's the message and what previous version of yourself do you send it to?
I'll send the message to myself when I was a young child living in Japan. And at that time, I was on a military installation with my family. And it was during the Vietnam War, Andy. And my father would be deployed with a high degree of frequency during that war. He'd be kind of in and out. You know, we were stationed in Japan and he would kind of go out on deployment. Now, I'm kind of dating myself a little bit because if you can imagine, this is before there was internet. This was before there were cell phones. There was before there was any technology. So I have vivid memory of literally kissing my father goodbye. I can feel it today and saying goodbye to him. I would not know where he was going. I would not know how long he was going to be gone, when he was coming home, or if he would come home. I had a sense of knowing of how fragile the situation was because my father also served during the Korean War. And during that war, he was taken into captivity and he was held as a prisoner of that war for nearly 30 years. Nearly 3 years. Now, while that was before my time, I was very aware that he was taken into captivity. I had heard the stories, and while I was young and a little girl, I was aware that something bad could happen. At that moment in time, all my playmates were going through the same thing. Their fathers were going off to war. And at a time when my life was turned the most upside down, and I was the most frightened and the most vulnerable, I actually learned about trust because we turned to one another, and it's our connection and support of one another that helped us move through those most painful times. So I fast forward today, and what I would tell that young girl is this is preparing you for life. This is giving you reference points. This is giving you vantage points that is going to help you serve other people. Today in my work, I understand vulnerability. I understand pain. I understand where that takes people. And I feel it helped prepare me to be of the deepest level and support and service to them when they're in that space. And for that, I feel remarkably privileged.
Excellent. Well, Michelle, we're all works in progress. What are you focused on right now in your personal journey of growth?
I'm focused on the next evolution of our work that supports leaders and teams and organizations take the principles off the art of trust building and bring them into their work every day. I have an extraordinary team. They're creating remarkable products. They're birthing online digital learning solutions that make it very easy for leaders and their teams to access and put into practice. That's a bit of a stretch for me, Andy. That's new learning. So there's that part of me that is evolving into really giving my team that leadership, giving our team that empowerment, and being fueled with the enthusiasm and the excitement of what that is going to enable and support leaders and teams to bring into their workspaces and foster and cultivate those high trust cultures.
Wonderful. So where can folks get a hold of you? What's your website? Let folks know where to get in touch with you.
Our website is www.reinatrustbuilding.
Excellent. Well, Michelle, it's been wonderful to get to know you. Thank you for your contributions to the Balancing Act. We wish you all the best. It's been a great conversation on trust.
Oh, thank you so much, Andy. I'm grateful to be here with you.
All right. My name is Andy Temte. This is the Balancing Act podcast. You can find us on all the major streaming services as well as out on YouTube. Please like, subscribe, rate, and most importantly, share this public educational good with your friends, your family, your neighbors, and a colleague or two. The show is produced by Nicholas Temte, and we'll see you next time on the Balancing Act.